The moment my aunt casually announced that I'd be watching 15 children during my cousin's wedding instead of actually attending the ceremony, I knew my family had crossed a line they could never uncross. I was 24 years old, standing in my childhood kitchen in suburban Ohio, staring at a woman who just reduced me to unpaid labor without even asking my permission. The audacity hung in the air like smoke from burnt toast, thick and suffocating, and I felt something inside me snap clean in half. My name is Rachel, and I've spent my entire life being the family's go-to person for everything nobody else wanted to do. Need someone to house sit during Christmas? Call Rachel. Someone has to pick up grandma from her colonoscopy at 6 in the morning? Rachel will do it. Forgot to buy a birthday present and need someone to run to the store 20 minutes before the party? Rachel's already halfway there. I'd become so accustomed to being voluntold for family obligations that I'd stopped recognizing it as manipulation. But this wedding situation was different. This wasn't just asking me to miss out on cake and dancing. This was asking me to sacrifice the entire event, to sit in a separate room with a herd of children ranging from 6 months to 12 years old, while everyone else celebrated my cousin Jennifer's big day. If you're enjoying this story so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button. We're working toward 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything to getting us there. Just click that red button, and you'll be part of this community as we share more stories like this one. The wedding was set for late September in Cincinnati, at one of those historic venues with exposed brick walls and Edison bulb lighting that costs a small fortune to rent. Jennifer had been planning this wedding for 18 months, and the family group chat had been absolutely exploding with updates about floral arrangements, seating charts, and dietary restrictions. I'd watched from the sidelines, occasionally contributing enthusiasm, but mostly just observing the controlled chaos that is wedding planning in a large Italian-American family. We're the kind of family where weddings aren't just celebrations but full-scale productions involving every aunt, uncle, cousin, and family friend within a 50-mile radius. The assumption that I'd babysit came about 6 weeks before the wedding during what was supposed to be a casual Sunday dinner at my parents' house. The September evening was warm, with that golden late summer light filtering through the dining room windows, and my mom had made her famous lasagna. The whole family was there, my parents, my younger brother Marcus, my Aunt Linda, who is Jennifer's mother, and my Uncle Tony. We were talking about the upcoming wedding when Aunt Linda turned to me with that smile she uses when she's about to ask for something she knows is unreasonable. "So, Rachel, we've been thinking about the kids' situation for the wedding," she started, cutting her lasagna into precise squares the way she always does when she's nervous. "You know how it is with these big family events. We've got so many little ones now, and we really want the parents to be able to relax and enjoy themselves." I nodded, not yet sensing the trap being laid. "That makes sense. Are you hiring a babysitter?" My Uncle Tony laughed, actually laughed, like I'd said something hilarious. "Why would we pay for a sitter when we've got you? You're so good with kids, Rachel. The little ones absolutely love you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop about 10 degrees. My mom was suddenly very interested in her wine glass. My dad cleared his throat, but said nothing. My brother Marcus, to his credit, looked uncomfortable but also stayed silent. This was how it always went in my family. Someone would volunteer me for something, everyone else would stay quiet, and I'd feel so pressured by the collective expectation that I'd just agree. But something in me was different that evening. Maybe it was because I'd just gotten a promotion at work and was finally starting to feel like an actual adult rather than the family's permanent assistant. Maybe it was because I'd been in therapy for 6 months and was learning about boundaries. Or maybe I was just tired of being taken for granted. Whatever the reason, I felt a surge of clarity that cut through years of conditioning. "I wasn't planning on babysitting during the wedding," I said, keeping my voice level. "I was planning on attending as a guest. Your subscription really helps this channel grow, and we're so close to hitting that 1,000 subscriber milestone. If you haven't already, please take a second to click subscribe. It's free, it takes just a moment, and it really makes a difference." Aunt Linda's smile tightened. "Well, of course you'll be at the wedding, honey. You'll just be in the side room with the kids. We've already set it up with activities and snacks. It'll be fun." "I don't want to spend the wedding in a side room with 15 children," I said, more firmly this time. I want to watch Jennifer get married. I want to sit at a table during dinner. I want to dance and celebrate with everyone else." The silence that followed was deafening. My Uncle Tony's face started turning that particular shade of red it gets when he's angry, but trying not to show it. "Rachel, we're family. Family helps each other out. This is Jennifer's special day, and we all need to pitch in." "I agree that it's Jennifer's special day," I replied. "Which is why I bought a dress, got her a gift from her registry, and took time off work to attend. But I didn't take time off to work for free as a babysitter." My mom finally spoke up, her voice soft and pleading. "Rachel, honey, maybe we can talk about this later? Let's just enjoy dinner." But Aunt Linda wasn't done. "I can't believe you're being so selfish about this. Do you know how much stress Jennifer is under? The last thing she needs is to worry about childcare falling through because you can't be bothered to help your own family." That word, selfish, it's the weapon my family has always used to keep people in line. If you prioritize your own needs, you're selfish. If you say no to unreasonable requests, you're selfish. If you dare to have boundaries, you're the most selfish person who ever lived. I'd internalized that message so deeply that I'd spent years twisting myself into knots to avoid that label. But sitting there, looking at Aunt Linda's expectant face and my Uncle Tony's irritated expression, I realized something crucial. It wasn't selfish to want to attend a wedding I was invited to. It was selfish to invite someone to an event and then demand they work through it instead. The realization hit me like cold water, clarifying and shocking all at once. "I'm not being selfish," I said quietly. "You're being selfish by expecting me to give up my entire experience of the wedding so that other people don't have to arrange their own childcare. If the parents want to attend without their kids, they need to hire a babysitter. That's not my responsibility." The dinner dissolved into tense silence after that. My aunt and uncle left early, barely saying goodbye. My mom tried to smooth things over, suggesting compromises like maybe I could watch the kids during just the ceremony or just the reception. But I held firm. I wasn't going to negotiate away pieces of my right to attend an event as a guest. It was all or nothing. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying this story. We're building a community here, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Help us reach that 1,000 subscriber goal by clicking subscribe right now. The next few weeks were tense. The family group chat, which had been buzzing constantly with wedding updates, went eerily quiet whenever I posted anything. I'd send a message and get maybe 1 or 2 brief responses while everyone else's posts generated long threads of enthusiastic replies. It was the digital equivalent of being frozen out, and it stung more than I wanted to admit. I found myself checking my phone obsessively, hoping for some sign that the family wasn't collectively punishing me for having boundaries. My cousin Jennifer finally called me about 3 weeks before the wedding. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was at home making dinner when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, anxiety knotting in my stomach, but I forced myself to pick up. "Hey, Rachel," Jennifer said, her voice tight with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. "We need to talk about the wedding." My heart sank. "Okay." My mom told me what happened at dinner. About the babysitting thing. There was a long pause. "I'm really disappointed in you." The words hit like a physical blow. Jennifer and I had been close growing up, not best friend close, but family close. We'd spent holidays together, gone to each other's birthday parties, shared family gossip. Hearing her disapproval felt like losing something important. "I'm disappointed too," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm disappointed that your mom assumed I'd work for free during your wedding without even asking me first. I'm disappointed that wanting to attend as a guest is being treated like some kind of betrayal." "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," Jennifer snapped. "Do you have any idea how expensive this wedding is? How many details I'm juggling? The last thing I need is family drama, because you can't help out for a few hours." "A few hours?" I couldn't help the incredulous laugh that escaped. "Jennifer, your wedding is an all-day event. Ceremony at 4, cocktail hour, reception, dancing until midnight. You're asking me to miss the entire thing." "Other people in the family would be happy to help," she said, her voice cold now. "Your brother could do it. Or cousin Mike. But we asked you because you're good with kids, and we trusted you. I guess we were wrong about that." Something in her tone, that weaponized guilt mixed with manipulation, made me suddenly see the whole situation more clearly. This wasn't really about childcare logistics. This was about control and expectation. My family had decided I would babysit, and my refusal to go along with their plan was being treated as a character flaw rather than a reasonable boundary. If Marcus or Mike are happy to babysit, then problem solved, I said evenly. They can watch the kids. That's not the point. Jennifer's voice rose. The point is that family is supposed to support each other, and you're making this all about you. No, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. I'm making this about basic respect. If you want to hire me as a babysitter, you can pay me my going rate, which is $20 an hour per child. For 15 kids over 8 hours, that would be $2,400. Or you can invite me as a guest, and I'll attend as a guest. Those are the options. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought she might have hung up. Finally, Jennifer spoke, her voice shaking with anger. You're really going to charge family? That's disgusting, Rachel. I can't believe you'd try to profit off my wedding day. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love your help getting there. If this story is resonating with you, please click that subscribe button. It takes just a second and really helps the channel grow. I'm not trying to profit, I explained, though I could feel my own anger rising now. I'm pointing out that what you're asking has real value. If you're not willing to pay for it, then it's not reasonable to expect me to provide it for free. Especially when doing so means I miss the entire wedding. Jennifer's response was to hang up on me. Just a click and then silence. I stood in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, trying to process what had just happened. The dinner I'd been making was starting to burn, filling the apartment with the acrid smell of scorched vegetables. I turned off the stove and sat down on the floor, right there in the middle of my kitchen, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The hurt, the anger, the frustration of being treated like my time and presence didn't matter unless I was being useful in exactly the way my family wanted. After that call, things escalated quickly. My mom called to tell me I was causing unnecessary drama and breaking Jennifer's heart right before her big day. My dad sent a text saying he was disappointed in me for not being a team player. Aunt Linda posted something on Facebook about how you find out who your real family is during important life events, which was obviously directed at me. Even relatives I barely knew were suddenly weighing in, sending messages about how family comes first, and I needed to stop being so stubborn. But here's what none of them seemed to understand. I wasn't refusing to help family. I was refusing to be exploited by family. There's a difference, and it's an important one. Helping family means occasionally going out of your way to support someone you love. Being exploited means having your time, energy, and presence taken for granted because people know you won't say no. I'd been on the exploitation side of that equation my entire life, and I was done. 2 weeks before the wedding, I made a decision. I wasn't going to attend. Not as a guest, not as a babysitter, not at all. I'd been going back and forth, part of me still hoping that somehow the situation would resolve itself, that someone in my family would recognize how unreasonable they were being and apologize. But as the days passed and the cold shoulder only intensified, I realized that wasn't going to happen. My family had decided I was the villain in this story, and nothing I said or did was going to change their minds. So I decided to change my own plans entirely. I'd taken time off work for the wedding, for days including the weekend. Instead of spending that time being frozen out by relatives and feeling miserable at an event where I clearly wasn't wanted, I booked a trip. Nothing fancy, just a long weekend at a cabin in the Smoky Mountains. I'd always wanted to visit in the fall when the leaves were changing, and this seemed like the perfect time. I would spend Jennifer's wedding day hiking, reading, and enjoying my own company. The relief I felt after making that decision was enormous, like setting down a heavy weight I'd been carrying for miles. I sent a polite message to the family group chat letting everyone know I wouldn't be attending the wedding and wishing Jennifer all the best. I didn't explain why, didn't justify my decision, didn't give anyone ammunition to argue with me. Just a simple, straightforward statement. Then I muted the chat and started packing for my trip. If you're finding this story interesting, I'd be so grateful if you'd click subscribe. We're working toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and every single person who joins helps us get there. Just hit that button and you'll get notifications whenever we post new content. The responses to my message came fast and furious, but I didn't read them until much later. In the moment, I was too busy feeling free. I'd spent so much of my life managing other people's emotions, trying to keep everyone happy, sacrificing my own needs to maintain family harmony. And where had it gotten me? To a place where my own family felt entitled to my labor and treated my boundaries as betrayal. I was done playing that game. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in a cozy cabin with a view of misty mountains and fall colors just beginning to peak. The air was crisp and cool, perfect for hiking. I made coffee in the little kitchen, sat on the porch, and watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. My phone was blowing up with messages and missed calls, but I left it inside. Whatever drama was unfolding back in Cincinnati, it wasn't my problem anymore. I spent the day hiking a trail called Alum Cave, which led up to incredible rock formations and offered views that made my heart ache in the best way. The physical exertion felt good, purposeful, so different from the emotional exhaustion I'd been feeling for weeks. I had lunch at a scenic overlook, just me and a sandwich, and the vast Tennessee wilderness spreading out below. I thought about Jennifer getting married, wondered if they'd found someone to watch all those kids, or if the parents had finally taken responsibility for their own children. But mostly, I thought about how peaceful I felt, how right this decision had been. That evening, back at the cabin, I finally looked at my phone. 43 missed calls. 78 text messages. The family group chat had exploded with over 200 messages. My immediate instinct was to feel guilty, to worry that something terrible had happened. But as I started reading through the messages, I realized nothing terrible had happened at all. The wedding had gone fine. Jennifer had looked beautiful. The ceremony was lovely. What had everyone so upset was my absence. Apparently, when I didn't show up, Aunt Linda had tried to recruit other family members to babysit. Marcus had agreed to help, but only during the ceremony, claiming he wanted to dance at the reception. Cousin Mike had flat out refused, saying he'd taken the day off work to attend a wedding, not to work childcare. Several other relatives had also declined when directly asked. The parents of the 15 children in question had then been forced to actually figure out their own solutions. Some had hired babysitters. Others had decided their kids could attend after all and made arrangements for them at the reception. 2 families had actually left early to get their kids to bed, which had caused its own mini-drama. But here's the really interesting part. Without me there to be the designated childcare solution, the family had been forced to confront something they'd been avoiding. Taking care of 15 children is a massive job. It's not something you just casually ask someone to do for free. It requires planning, compensation, and respect for the person doing it. By removing myself from the equation, I'd held up a mirror to how unreasonable their expectations had been. And they didn't like what they saw. Please help us reach 1,000 subscribers by clicking that subscribe button. Your support means the world and helps us keep sharing stories like this one. It's quick, it's free, and it really makes a difference. The messages in the group chat were all over the place. Some people were angry, calling me selfish and dramatic. Others were defending me, saying I had every right to skip the wedding if I wanted to. My mom had sent several long texts about how hurt she was, how I'd embarrassed the family, how I'd ruined Jennifer's day by not being there. But there were also messages from my brother and a few cousins saying they understood where I was coming from and respected my decision. The text that caught my attention most came from my cousin Sarah, who I'd always liked but wasn't super close with. She'd written, "Good for you, Rachel. I've been watching our family treat you like free labor for years, and it's messed up. You deserve better. Proud of you for standing up for yourself." I sat on the cabin porch reading that message over and over, feeling something shift inside me. It wasn't just about this wedding anymore. It was about a lifetime of being overlooked, undervalued, and taken for granted. And by finally saying no, by finally putting myself first, I'd given other people permission to see the pattern too. Sarah's message was followed by similar ones from other relatives who'd been watching the situation unfold. They'd seen how I was being treated and recognized it wasn't right. Of course, not everyone felt that way. Aunt Linda sent me a scathing message about how I'd betrayed the family, how I was selfish and ungrateful, how I'd never be welcomed at family events again. My Uncle Tony sent something similar. Jennifer didn't message me at all, which hurt more than the angry messages did. We'd grown up together, shared so many memories, and apparently all of that meant nothing if I wouldn't sacrifice my own well-being for her convenience. But you know what? I was okay with that. Because I'd spent the most beautiful day in the mountains, taking care of myself, doing exactly what I wanted to do. And that felt better than any wedding reception ever could have. I'd chosen myself, and the sky hadn't fallen. The world kept turning. The wedding happened without me. And I was fine. Better than fine, actually. I was free. The next morning, I went for another hike, this time to Cataract Falls. The weather was perfect, cool and sunny, and the falls were spectacular. I took dozens of photos, not for social media, but just for me. I wanted to remember this trip, this turning point where I'd finally stood up for myself. When I got back to the cabin that afternoon, I found a voicemail from my mom. Her voice was different from the angry texts, quieter and more thoughtful. "Rachel, honey, it's Mom. I've been thinking a lot since the wedding. Your Aunt Linda is still furious, and Jennifer isn't speaking to you, but some of what people have been saying is making sense to me. Your dad and I talked last night, and we realized we've been letting you get pushed around for a long time. We thought we were keeping the peace, but really we were just letting other people take advantage of you. I'm sorry, sweetheart. You deserved better from us. Call me when you get a chance. I love you." If you've been enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're building something special here, and your subscription helps us reach more people. Hit that button and join our growing community. I listened to that voicemail 3 times, feeling emotions I couldn't quite name. Vindication, certainly. Relief that at least my parents were starting to understand. But also sadness that it had taken such a dramatic stand for anyone to see what had been happening. I called my mom back, and we talked for over an hour. She apologized, really apologized, not just a surface-level sorry, but a deep acknowledgement of the patterns that had been established in our family. She admitted that they'd been using me as a pressure valve, someone who would always say yes, so they didn't have to deal with conflict or uncomfortable conversations. My dad got on the phone too, and he apologized as well. He said he'd been proud of me for getting my promotion at work, for building my own life, but he hadn't connected that growth to needing respect within the family too. He'd still seen me as little Rachel who would do whatever was asked without question. But I wasn't that person anymore, and it was time the family recognized that. When I got back to Cincinnati after my mountain weekend, things were different. Aunt Linda and Uncle Tony were still not speaking to me, and Jennifer had blocked me on all social media. But other relationships had actually strengthened. My brother Marcus came over and apologized for not speaking up at that dinner. He said he'd been a coward, and he admired me for having the courage to set boundaries. Sarah and I started hanging out more, bonding over shared experiences of family expectations and the difficulty of pushing back against them. The most unexpected development came about a month after the wedding. I got a call from Jennifer's younger sister, Amy, who I'd never been particularly close with. She was getting engaged and wanted to talk about wedding planning. Specifically, she wanted my advice on how to handle family expectations without letting people take advantage of her. We met for coffee, and she told me that watching what happened with Jennifer's wedding had been eye-opening for her. She'd seen how the family treated me, and she decided she didn't want that for her own wedding. "When I get married," Amy said, stirring her latte, "I want everyone there to actually enjoy themselves. I don't want to put people to work unless they volunteer, and I'm going to pay for professional childcare if people want to bring kids." Watching what happened with you made me realize that family events should bring people together, not create resentment and drama. Help us hit 1,000 subscribers by clicking that button right now. If you're invested in this story, imagine how many others could benefit from hearing it too. Subscribe and be part of the community. Her words meant more to me than she probably realized. It wasn't just that I'd stood up for myself. By doing so, I'd actually influenced how the next generation was thinking about family dynamics and boundaries. Change doesn't always come from grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it comes from one person quietly refusing to accept disrespect, and that refusal rippling outward to inspire others. 6 months after the wedding, things in the family had settled into a new normal. Aunt Linda and I were cordial at holiday gatherings, but would never be close again. Jennifer and I still weren't speaking, though I'd heard through the family grapevine that she was struggling in her marriage, which made me sad despite everything. My parents had made genuine efforts to respect my boundaries and to check in before volunteering me for things. And I discovered something powerful. The family members who truly valued me were still in my life. The ones who only valued what I could do for them had fallen away. And that was okay. I also started noticing other family members pushing back against unreasonable expectations in small ways. My brother refused to host Thanksgiving even though Aunt Linda had already decided he would, insisting instead that the family rotate hosting duties fairly. Sarah told her parents she wouldn't be lending them money anymore after they'd borrowed from her repeatedly without paying her back. Cousin Mike set boundaries with his controlling mother about unsolicited parenting advice. It was like the wedding situation had opened a door, showing people that it was possible to say no without the world ending. The most interesting development came almost a year later. Jennifer called me out of the blue. I almost didn't answer, anxiety spiking when I saw her name on my screen, but curiosity won out. Her voice on the other end was quiet, tentative. "Rachel? It's Jennifer. I know it's been a long time, and you probably don't want to talk to me, but I needed to call. I've been in therapy working through some stuff, and I realized I owe you an apology. A real one." I didn't say anything, just waited. She continued, words tumbling out like she'd been holding them back for months. "I was so wrong about the wedding, about expecting you to babysit, about making you feel guilty for having boundaries, about all of it. I was so caught up in having the perfect wedding that I treated you like you were just there to serve my needs. And then when you didn't show up, I was angry because deep down I knew you were right. I knew I'd been unreasonable, but admitting that felt like admitting the whole wedding wasn't as perfect as I wanted it to be." We talked for over 2 hours that day. Jennifer told me about struggles in her marriage, about feeling like she'd rushed into things trying to meet family expectations, about realizing that the wedding she'd planned had been more about impressing people than celebrating her relationship. She'd been in therapy for 6 months, working through anxiety and people-pleasing tendencies, and our situation had come up a lot in her sessions. "My therapist asked me why I thought it was okay to ask you to work for free during my wedding," Jennifer said. "And I didn't have a good answer. The truth is, I'd gotten so used to you saying yes to everything that I stopped seeing you as a person with your own needs and feelings. You were just Rachel who helps. Rachel who's good with kids. Rachel who doesn't complain. And when you finally did complain, when you set a boundary, it felt like betrayal. But it wasn't. It was just you finally respecting yourself." Don't forget we're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, and you can help us get there by clicking subscribe. Every person who joins this community makes it stronger. Be part of the journey and hit that button now. Jennifer and I are rebuilding our relationship slowly. We're not back to where we were, and maybe we never will be, but we're in a better place. A more honest place. She understands now why I made the choices I did, and I understand better why she reacted the way she did. We're both working on being better at boundaries and communication. It turns out that family relationships, like any relationships, require mutual respect to thrive. Looking back on everything, I don't regret skipping the wedding. That weekend in the mountains was exactly what I needed. It was a declaration of independence, a statement that my well-being mattered. It forced difficult conversations that needed to happen. It changed family dynamics that needed changing. And it taught me one of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned. You teach people how to treat you. For years, I taught my family that my time, energy, and presence could be taken for granted. That my needs were less important than keeping the peace. That I would always say yes, no matter how unreasonable the request. By saying no, by choosing myself, by refusing to be exploited even when people called me selfish, I taught them something different. I taught them that I have value beyond my usefulness. That my presence is a gift, not a given. That relationships have to be reciprocal to be healthy. Some family members learned that lesson and adjusted accordingly. Others didn't, and those relationships fell away. Both outcomes were necessary. The strange thing about setting boundaries is that it often feels selfish in the moment, especially if you've spent your whole life putting other people first. Your brain has been trained to equate taking care of yourself with being a bad person. But that training is wrong. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of healthy relationships. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries. The people who don't respect your boundaries don't truly love you. They love what you do for them. Learning to tell the difference is painful, but essential. I think about that dinner table confrontation sometimes, about the look on Aunt Linda's face when I first said no. I think about how scared I felt, how sure I was that saying no would destroy everything. And then I think about where I am now. Still close with the family members who matter. Stronger. More confident. Living according to my own values instead of just reacting to other people's expectations. The fear of saying no turned out to be so much worse than the actual consequences of saying no. That's the lie people pleasers tell themselves. We convince ourselves that if we just keep saying yes, if we just keep sacrificing, eventually people will appreciate us and love us and treat us well. But it doesn't work that way. Saying yes to everything doesn't make people value you more. It makes them value you less because they learn your needs don't matter. Real love and respect come from honest relationships where both people have the freedom to say no, where boundaries are respected, where help is asked for, not demanded, where appreciation is expressed, not assumed. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We're so close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and your support really matters. Click that button and join us on this journey of sharing real stories about real issues. If I could go back and talk to the version of myself sitting at that dinner table, overwhelmed and scared, I would tell her that everything is going to be okay. Better than okay. I'd tell her that the temporary discomfort of conflict is nothing compared to the chronic pain of being disrespected. I'd tell her that the people who get angry at her boundaries are the same people who are benefiting from her having none. I'd tell her that family doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. It means loving people while still respecting yourself. And I'd tell her that a weekend in the mountains, choosing peace over people-pleasing, will be one of the best decisions she ever makes. The wedding story has become something of a legend in my family now. The time Rachel skipped Jennifer's wedding and went to the mountains instead. Some people tell it as a cautionary tale about selfishness. Others tell it as an inspirational story about standing up for yourself. The truth is probably somewhere in between, or maybe it's both at once. Life is complicated like that. People are complicated. Family is definitely complicated. But one thing I know for certain is that I would make the same choice again. Every single time. These days, I'm much more selective about what family obligations I take on. I help when I genuinely want to help, when I have the time and energy, when it's asked rather than demanded. And I say no when something doesn't work for me, without guilt, without over-explaining, without apologizing for having boundaries. It's not always easy. The old patterns still try to reassert themselves sometimes. But I've learned to recognize the signs. That tightness in my chest when someone asks me to do something I don't want to do. That voice in my head saying I should just agree to keep the peace. That familiar feeling of my needs being pushed aside. When I feel those things now, I pause. I breathe. And I remember that I have choices. I'm not the family's permanent helper anymore. I'm Rachel, a whole person with my own life, my own dreams, my own limits. I have a career I'm passionate about, friends who respect me, hobbies I enjoy, and a future I'm building on my own terms. My family is part of that future, the healthy parts of it anyway, but they're not the entire future. And that's exactly how it should be. Family is supposed to support you as you grow into yourself, not trap you in a role that serves them. The people who understand that are still in my life. The ones who don't have gradually faded into the background. And I'm at peace with that. If there's anything I hope people take away from my story, it's this. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to prioritize your own well-being, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if people call you selfish, even if it changes relationships. Because a relationship that can't survive you having boundaries isn't a healthy relationship. It's a dynamic based on your subordination, and you deserve better than that. Everyone deserves better than that. Whether it's family, friends, romantic partners, or colleagues, the principle is the same. Healthy relationships require mutual respect. If someone in your life consistently disrespects your boundaries, consistently expects you to sacrifice your well-being for theirs, consistently makes you feel guilty for having needs, that's not love. That's control. And you have every right to step away from it. So here I am, nearly 2 years after that fateful dinner table conversation, living a life that feels authentically mine. Some family relationships are stronger, others are gone, and still others are works in progress. But I'm okay with all of it because I know I made the right choice. I chose self-respect. I chose peace. I chose the mountains over a wedding where I wasn't truly wanted. And in doing so, I chose myself. Finally, completely, unapologetically. And that has made all the difference. The aftermath of choosing myself over family obligation didn't end with Jennifer's phone call or the gradual healing of some relationships. Life has a way of continuing to test the boundaries you set, pushing against them to see if they'll hold. And my family, despite some members learning important lessons, wasn't done trying to see if the old Rachel, the people-pleasing Rachel, might resurface under the right circumstances. About 3 months after Jennifer and I had our reconciliation phone call, my Aunt Linda's mother, my great-grandmother Rosemary, passed away at the age of 92. She'd been declining for several years, and while her death wasn't unexpected, it still hit the family hard. Rosemary had been the matriarch, the center around which so many family traditions revolved. Her house in the suburbs had hosted countless holidays, birthdays, and Sunday dinners over the decades. She was the keeper of family recipes, the teller of family stories, the one who remembered everyone's birthday without needing Facebook to remind her. The funeral was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon, followed by a reception at Aunt Linda's house. I took the day off work and prepared myself emotionally for what I knew would be a difficult family gathering. Great-grandma Rosemary and I had been close. She taught me to make her famous pizzelle cookies when I was 8 years old, and we'd spent many afternoons together in her kitchen, talking about everything and nothing while the scent of anise and vanilla filled the air. I genuinely wanted to be there to honor her memory and support the family through grief. The funeral itself was beautiful in that bittersweet way funerals can be. The church was packed with family and friends, and the priest told stories about Rosemary's kindness and strength that had people laughing through their tears. I sat with my parents and Marcus, feeling the weight of collective grief, but also the warmth of shared memories. For a few hours, the tension from the wedding situation seemed to fade into the background. We were just a family mourning someone we'd all loved. But then came the reception. I should have known that grief and family obligation would mix into something complicated. I arrived at Aunt Linda's house to find it already crowded with relatives, the dining room table covered in casseroles and baked goods that people had brought. The atmosphere was that particular mix of sadness and social gathering that happens after funerals, people crying one moment and laughing at old memories the next. I was helping myself to a plate of food when Aunt Linda cornered me in the kitchen. "Rachel, I need you to do something for me," she said, her voice low and urgent. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked exhausted in a way that made me feel sympathetic despite our strained relationship. "Mom's house needs to be cleaned out, and we need to start going through her things this weekend. The whole family is going to help, and we need you there." Something in her tone immediately put me on alert. This wasn't a request. It was a demand dressed up as a request, delivered at a funeral where saying no would make me look heartless. It was emotional manipulation whether Aunt Linda realized it or not, and I could feel myself being pulled back into old patterns. "I'm sorry, Aunt Linda, but I have plans this weekend," I said carefully. It wasn't entirely true. I'd planned to spend the weekend doing errands and relaxing, but those were still plans. Plans that mattered because I'd made them for myself. Her face hardened. "Plans? Rachel, this is family. This is important. We need everyone there to get through all of Mom's belongings. There's 70 years worth of stuff in that house." "I understand it's a big job," I said, keeping my voice gentle but firm. "But I can't make it this weekend. Maybe I could help the following weekend?" Aunt Linda's expression shifted from pleading to angry in a heartbeat. Of course you can't make it. Just like you couldn't make it to Jennifer's wedding. I don't know what's happened to you, Rachel, but you've become incredibly selfish. Your great-grandmother just died, and you can't even clear one weekend to help honor her memory? The accusation stung, especially delivered in a kitchen full of grieving relatives who were now very obviously listening to our conversation. I could feel multiple sets of eyes on us, people pausing their conversations to hear what I would say. The old Rachel would have caved under that pressure, would have canceled her weekend plans and shown up at Rosemary's house to spend hours sorting through old photographs and vintage clothing. But I wasn't the old Rachel anymore. If you're still with me on this journey, please consider subscribing to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything, and it just takes a quick click on that subscribe button. Aunt Linda, I loved Great-Grandma Rosemary very much, and I'll honor her memory in my own way, I said quietly. But I can't drop everything this weekend. I'm happy to help another time when I have more notice. Unbelievable, Aunt Linda muttered, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Absolutely unbelievable. You know what, Rachel? Don't bother coming at all. We don't need your help if it's such an inconvenience for you. She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in the kitchen with a plate of food I no longer wanted and the uncomfortable awareness that I just caused another family scene. My cousin Sarah appeared at my elbow almost immediately, steering me toward the back porch where we could talk privately. Don't let her guilt you, Sarah said firmly once we were outside. That was completely unfair. She ambushed you at a funeral and then got mad when you had boundaries. That's manipulation, pure and simple. I nodded, but my hands were shaking. I know, but it still feels terrible. Maybe I should just help this weekend. It's just 2 days, right? And it's for Great-Grandma. No, Sarah said, her voice sharp. Don't do that. Don't let grief be weaponized against you. Yes, Great-Grandma died, and that's sad. But her house has been sitting there for 92 years. It can sit there for another week until you're available. Aunt Linda had no right to demand you drop everything with 2 days' notice, and she definitely had no right to do it at a funeral where you couldn't reasonably say no without looking like a monster. Sarah's words helped, but the guilt still gnawed at me. I stayed at the reception for another hour, mostly talking with relatives who weren't involved in the drama, but I could feel Aunt Linda's anger radiating from across the room. When I finally left, I felt emotionally drained in a way that had nothing to do with mourning Rosemary and everything to do with family dynamics. That evening, alone in my apartment, I did a lot of thinking. The wedding situation had been clear-cut to me. I'd been asked to work for free during an event I'd been invited to as a guest. The boundary was obvious. But this situation felt murkier. It was about helping family during a difficult time, honoring someone who had died, contributing to a task that needed doing. Was I being selfish by not rearranging my weekend? Was I taking the boundary thing too far? I called my therapist, Dr. Martinez, even though it wasn't our scheduled session day. She'd been helping me work through family dynamics for over a year now, and I trusted her perspective. After I explained the situation, there was a long pause before she spoke. Rachel, let me ask you something, Dr. Martinez said. If Aunt Linda had called you last week and said, Great-Grandma's house needs to be cleaned out soon, and we're thinking of doing it in a couple of weekends, would you be available to help? What would you have said? I thought about it. I probably would have said yes. I'd have wanted to help, and I would have appreciated being asked in advance, so I could plan for it. Exactly, Dr. Martinez said. The issue isn't whether you help your family. The issue is how your help is requested and whether your time is respected. Aunt Linda didn't ask if you were available. She told you that you were needed this weekend and expected you to comply. That's not a request. That's a demand. And when you couldn't meet that demand, she used shame and guilt to try to manipulate you into compliance. Her words crystallized something I'd been struggling to articulate. It wasn't about being unwilling to help family. It was about being treated like my time and plans were irrelevant unless they aligned with what other people needed from me. The pattern was the same as the wedding situation, just wrapped in different circumstances. We're building a community here, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Hit that subscribe button to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and to get notifications about new stories. Over the next few days, the family group chat exploded with messages about cleaning out Rosemary's house. Photos of old furniture, debates about who should get which heirlooms, logistical discussions about renting a dumpster and organizing estate sale items. I watched it all happen from the outside, having muted the chat after Aunt Linda posted something about how some people talk about family values, but don't live them. The jab was clearly directed at me, and several relatives liked the comment. But here's what was interesting. As I watched the chat scroll by, I noticed something. The people who were actually doing the work, who were showing up at Rosemary's house and sorting through decades of belongings, were a relatively small group. Maybe 8 or 10 people out of a family of 30 plus. All those relatives who'd been so quick to call me selfish for not dropping everything? Most of them weren't there either. They had their own reasons, their own conflicts, their own limitations. But somehow when they couldn't make it, it was understandable. When I couldn't make it, it was a character flaw. The double standard was glaring once I noticed it. Cousin Mike couldn't help because he had to work. Understandable. Uncle Tony couldn't help because of his back problems. Understandable. Various other relatives couldn't help because of childcare issues, prior commitments, living too far away. All understandable. But when I said I had plans, suddenly I was selfish and didn't care about family. The realization was both infuriating and liberating. It confirmed that this was never really about whether I helped or not. It was about whether I complied with expectations without question. The following weekend, the one I'd originally offered to help, I reached out to my mom to see if they were still working on Rosemary's house. She said they were mostly done with the major sorting, but there were still boxes of photographs and documents that needed to be gone through. I drove over on Saturday morning, prepared to spend the day helping with whatever was left. When I arrived, only my mom, my Aunt Carol, who is Aunt Linda's sister, and cousin Sarah were there. The house felt strange and empty, already showing signs of being cleared out. Furniture had been removed, leaving dust outlines on the hardwood floors. The walls that had been covered in family photos were now bare, revealing unfaded rectangles of paint. It was like watching Rosemary's life being erased in real time, and it made my chest ache. "Rachel," my mom said, clearly surprised to see me. "I didn't know you were coming." "I said I'd help when I could," I replied. "Where do you need me?" We spent the day going through boxes of old photographs, some dating back to the 1940s. It was emotional work, looking at pictures of relatives I'd known and relatives who died before I was born, watching the family history unfold in black and white and faded color prints. We laughed at outdated hairstyles and fashion choices. We cried over photos of Rosemary as a young mother, as a middle-aged woman, as an elderly grandmother surrounded by her family. We sorted them into piles, trying to decide what should be kept, what should be distributed to various family members, what could be digitized. Aunt Carol, who'd barely spoken to me since the wedding situation, was quiet most of the day. But as afternoons stretched into evening and it was just the two of us finishing up the last box of photos, she suddenly spoke. "I owe you an apology, Rachel," she said, not looking up from the photographs she was sorting. "I've been thinking a lot since Mom died about family and expectations and how we treat each other. I was angry at you about the wedding thing, thought you were being difficult for no reason. But watching how Linda demanded you drop everything for this, and how she reacted when you couldn't, I realized something. We've been treating you terribly for a long time." I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. She continued, her voice soft and thoughtful. "You know why I couldn't help last weekend? Because I had plans. I was going to a concert with my husband that we'd bought tickets for months ago. And when I told Linda I couldn't make it, she was annoyed, but she accepted it. She didn't call me selfish. She didn't say I didn't care about family. She just said okay and moved on. But with you, it's different. With you, there's this expectation that you'll always be available, always willing to sacrifice whatever you have going on. And that's not fair. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future stories. We're working toward 1,000 subscribers, and your support really helps us grow. Just click that button. Her words meant more than she probably knew. This was Aunt Linda's own sister recognizing the double standard, acknowledging the unfairness. We talked for another hour after we finished with the photos, sitting on Rosemary's old porch as the sun set. Aunt Carol told me about her own struggles with family expectations, about times she'd felt pressured to host holidays or organize events or mediate family conflicts because that's what was expected of her. She'd gone along with it for years until she realized how much resentment she was building up. The thing about family is, they'll take as much as you're willing to give, Aunt Carol said. And if you're willing to give everything, they'll take everything and still expect more. It's not malicious, mostly. It's just human nature. People get used to things being a certain way, and they don't question it until someone makes them question it. You made us question it, Rachel. And some people, like Linda, got angry because they didn't like what they saw when they looked closer. But others, like me, realized we needed to do better. I drove home that evening feeling complicated emotions. Satisfaction that I'd helped when I was actually available. Validation from Aunt Carol's apology and recognition. But also sadness that it had taken so much conflict and pain to get to this point. Why couldn't my family have just respected my boundaries from the beginning? Why did it require multiple confrontations and damaged relationships for people to see that they'd been treating me unfairly? The answer I was learning was that change is hard. Patterns that have been established for years don't shift easily. People resist change, especially when that change requires them to examine their own behavior and admit they've been wrong. It's easier to label the person setting boundaries as difficult or selfish than it is to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, those boundaries were necessary because the relationship had become unhealthy. A few weeks after Rosemary's house was fully cleared out, Aunt Linda called me. I almost didn't answer, so used to our interactions being confrontational, but something made me pick up. Her voice on the other end was tired and tentative. Rachel, it's Linda. I know we haven't been on good terms, and I know that's mostly my fault. Carol talked to me after you helped with Mom's photos. She said some things I needed to hear. I'm calling to apologize. We talked for over an hour. Aunt Linda explained that she'd been under enormous stress, first with Jennifer's wedding, and then with Rosemary's declining health and death. She'd fallen into a pattern of expecting me to be available for everything because I'd always been available before. She'd never stopped to consider that maybe I'd only been available because I'd been too afraid to say no, not because I genuinely had unlimited time and energy. I think I was jealous in a weird way, Aunt Linda admitted. You're young and child-free, and you have this career you're building. Your time is your own in a way mine hasn't been for decades. And instead of respecting that, I think I resented it. I wanted you to sacrifice your freedom to make my life easier, and I justified it by calling it family obligation. But it wasn't obligation. It was exploitation. Her self-awareness surprised me. We didn't fix everything in that one conversation, but it was a start. A real start, not just surface-level apologies, but actual acknowledgement of patterns and dynamics that had been unhealthy. We agreed to try to rebuild our relationship slowly, with clearer communication and better boundaries on both sides. Please subscribe to help us reach our goal. Every subscription matters and helps us share more stories with people who need to hear them. The months that followed brought more shifts in family dynamics. Amy, Jennifer's younger sister, got engaged and started planning her wedding. True to what she told me over coffee, she handled things completely differently than Jennifer had. She hired professional childcare for the reception. She didn't volunteer family members for tasks without asking first. She explicitly told everyone that she wanted them there to celebrate, not to work. Her wedding, which happened about 6 months after Rosemary's death, was genuinely fun. I attended as a guest, danced with my cousins, and felt like part of the family in a way I hadn't in years. Jennifer and I continued to slowly repair our relationship. We met for lunch every few weeks, talking about her marriage struggles, my career developments, and the ways we'd both been working on ourselves. She was in couples therapy with her husband, trying to address issues that had started even before the wedding. The pressure to have a perfect wedding had been a symptom of deeper problems, a need for external validation that had roots in how we were raised as people-pleasers in a demanding family. I'm learning that it's okay to disappoint people, Jennifer told me during one of our lunches. It's taken me 28 years to figure out that not everyone is going to like every decision I make, and that's actually fine. I spent so much energy trying to make everyone happy, and I made myself miserable in the process. I'm still working on it, but I'm getting better. Her growth made me hopeful, not just for our relationship, but for the family as a whole. Change wasn't happening overnight, but it was happening. Slowly, person by person, conversation by conversation, the family was learning that boundaries weren't threats. They were actually the foundation of healthier relationships. My relationship with my parents continued to strengthen. They made conscious efforts to ask before volunteering me for things, to respect when I said no, to treat my time as valuable. My dad started checking in regularly, not just about family stuff but about my life, my job, my happiness. My mom and I had lunch together weekly, and she started sharing her own struggles with family expectations and people-pleasing, things she'd never talked about before. Marcus, my brother, also started setting more boundaries. He'd always been quieter than me, more likely to go along to get along, but watching me push back had given him permission to do the same. When Aunt Linda tried to volunteer him to organize the family Christmas party, he politely declined and suggested a rotation system where different family members hosted each year. The suggestion was met with some resistance, but ultimately accepted. It was a small victory, but it represented a shift in how the family operated. One evening, about 1.5 years after the infamous wedding, I was having dinner with Sarah when she brought up something that had been on my mind too. "You know what's weird?" she said, twirling pasta on her fork. "The family is actually healthier now than it was before all the drama. Like, we fight more openly, which sounds bad, but it's actually better than everyone just silently resenting each other and expecting people to read minds." She was right. Before I'd started setting boundaries, the family had operated on unspoken expectations and passive-aggressive communication. Problems festered beneath the surface because nobody wanted to rock the boat. But now people actually talked about issues. They negotiated instead of demanding. They respected no instead of bulldozing over it. There was less fake harmony but more genuine connection. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you're enjoying this story. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and you can help us get there. The real test came when it was time to plan the next major family event, the 50th wedding anniversary for my grandparents on my dad's side. This was a huge milestone, and the family wanted to do something special. In the old days, this would have somehow become my responsibility to plan, or at least I would have been voluntold to handle major portions of it. But this time was different. My Aunt Carol sent out an email to the whole family asking who wanted to be involved in planning the party and what tasks people were willing to take on. It was organized, respectful, and actually asked for volunteers instead of assigning duties. I signed up to help with decorations and creating a photo slideshow, tasks I actually enjoyed and had time for. Other family members volunteered for food, venue booking, invitations, and other necessary elements. The work was distributed fairly, and everyone contributed what they could. The anniversary party was wonderful. My grandparents were surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, celebrating 50 years of marriage. The decorations looked beautiful, the food was amazing, and the slideshow I'd created had people crying and laughing in equal measure. But what made it truly special was that nobody was resentful. Nobody had been forced to do more than they'd volunteered for. Everyone there wanted to be there, celebrating not because they felt obligated, but because they genuinely loved my grandparents. During the party, my grandfather pulled me aside. He was 83 years old, with kind eyes and hands weathered from decades of working in construction. "Your grandmother and I are really proud of you, Rachel," he said quietly. "We've been watching how you've handled yourself with the family, all the boundary stuff, and the conflicts. It takes courage to stand up for yourself, especially with people you love. A lot of people never learn that lesson. They spend their whole lives being doormats and wondering why they're unhappy." His words struck deep. My grandparents had been quietly observing everything, and they'd understood what I'd been fighting for. They'd raised their children in a different era, one where family obligation was paramount and personal boundaries were barely discussed. But they'd lived long enough to see how that paradigm could become toxic, how unlimited obligation could turn into exploitation. Their approval meant more to me than almost anything. As the party wound down, and people started saying their goodbyes. I looked around at my family. Imperfect, complicated, sometimes frustrating, but ultimately mine. We'd been through conflict and pain and difficult conversations. Some relationships had been damaged, though most were healing. But we'd emerged from it all with something important, a new understanding of how to treat each other with respect. It wasn't perfect. Family never is. But it was better, healthier, more honest. The journey from that dinner table confrontation about babysitting Jennifer's wedding to this anniversary celebration had been long and difficult. There had been moments when I doubted myself, when the guilt and pressure had been almost overwhelming. There had been relationships that didn't survive my newfound boundaries, people who couldn't or wouldn't adjust to the new dynamic. That loss was real, and it hurt. But the alternative would have been worse. I could have continued being the family's go-to person, always available, always sacrificing, always putting everyone else's needs before my own. I would have attended Jennifer's wedding as an unpaid babysitter, missed the entire event while everyone else celebrated. I would have dropped my weekend plans to clean out Rosemary's house, no matter what I'd had scheduled. I would have continued saying yes to every request, every demand, every expectation, until there was nothing left of me except my usefulness to others. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a story. We're building something special here, and your subscription helps us keep going. Hit that button and join the community. Instead, I chose a different path. A harder path in many ways, but one that led to self-respect and genuine relationships. The family members who truly valued me learned to respect my boundaries. The ones who only valued my compliance eventually faded away or adjusted their expectations. And I learned the most important lesson of all: you can love your family and still prioritize your own well-being. These things aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, the healthiest family relationships are the ones where both are possible. Looking back now, I wouldn't change anything. Even the pain of that initial confrontation, even the months of tension and damaged relationships, even the guilt and doubt I felt along the way. All of it was necessary to break a pattern that had been established over decades. Change is uncomfortable. Growth is painful. But both are essential for living an authentic life where you're valued for who you are, not just what you can do for others. The story of me refusing to babysit at Jennifer's wedding has become part of family lore, told and retold with different interpretations depending on who's telling it. To some, it's still a story about the time Rachel was difficult. To others, it's a story about necessary boundaries and standing up for yourself. The truth contains elements of both, like most family stories do. But what matters to me isn't how the story is told. What matters is how it changed things, how one act of self-respect rippled outward and influenced how my family functions. I think about young people in my family now, my younger cousins and the next generation, and I hope they're learning different lessons than I did. I hope they're learning that family love should never require self-abandonment, that helping people you care about is beautiful, but being exploited isn't help, it's dysfunction. That you can honor family traditions and connections while still maintaining your own identity and boundaries. These are lessons I had to learn the hard way, through conflict and pain. Maybe the next generation will have an easier time of it because of the groundwork that's been laid. The wedding I refused to attend happened over 2 years ago now. Jennifer is still married, though she and her husband are still in therapy working through issues. Aunt Linda and I have rebuilt a cordial relationship based on mutual respect rather than her automatic expectation of my availability. The 15 children who needed babysitting that day are older now, and their parents have learned to arrange their own childcare for events. The family continues to have gatherings and celebrations, but the dynamics have shifted in subtle but important ways. And me? I'm thriving. My career has continued to grow. I got another promotion last year, and am now managing a small team. I've developed deeper friendships outside the family, relationships based on mutual respect and reciprocity. I've taken up hobbies I'd always been too busy for when I was constantly available for family obligations. I've traveled, spending a week in Colorado hiking and a long weekend in New Orleans exploring the city. I've built a life that feels authentically mine, not just a series of responses to other people's needs and expectations. The guilt doesn't completely disappear. I still sometimes feel that pang when I have to say no to family requests, that old conditioning telling me I'm being selfish or difficult. But I've learned to recognize those feelings for what they are, echoes of old patterns, not truth. I can acknowledge the guilt and still honor my boundaries. I can feel uncomfortable and still know I'm making the right choice. Growth doesn't mean the struggle disappears. It means you develop better tools for handling it. If this story has resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel. We're almost at our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and your support really does make a difference. Click that button and be part of our growing community. Recently, a younger cousin, Emma, who's 19, reached out to me for advice. She's been feeling pressured by her parents to major in business in college when she's really passionate about art. The expectation is that she'll eventually take over the family's small plumbing business, but that's not the life she wants. She was drowning in guilt, feeling like she was disappointing everyone by wanting to pursue her own dreams. I met her for coffee and told her my story, the full story, about the wedding, about Rosemary's house, about all the times I'd said yes when I meant no, and how much resentment that had built up. I told her about finally learning to set boundaries and how scary and necessary it had been. We talked for hours about family expectations, about the difference between honoring your family and sacrificing yourself for them, about how to love people while still maintaining your own identity. The thing is, I told Emma as we sat in the coffee shop watching the sun set outside, your family might be disappointed if you don't do what they want. They might be upset or angry or confused. But disappointment isn't permanent, and their feelings aren't your responsibility to manage. What is permanent is the life you build. If you spend the next 40 years running a plumbing business you hate because you were too scared to disappoint your parents, that resentment will poison everything. Your relationship with them, your relationship with yourself, your whole life. Better to disappoint them now and build something authentic than to slowly destroy yourself trying to be who they want you to be. Emma decided to major in art. Her parents weren't happy about it initially, but they're coming around. She sends me pictures sometimes of her work, beautiful paintings and sculptures that show real talent and passion. She's also started setting other boundaries with her family, small ones at first, but building confidence. And she tells me that knowing someone else in the family has walked this path, has survived the guilt and the conflict and come out stronger, gives her courage. That's ultimately what I hope comes from my story. Not just that I learned to set boundaries and improve my own life, though that's important, but that my journey gives other people permission to set their own boundaries. That it shows family relationships can survive and even strengthen when everyone involved commits to treating each other with genuine respect. That it demonstrates how breaking unhealthy patterns, while painful in the short term, leads to much healthier dynamics long term. Family is complicated. There's no instruction manual for navigating the intricate web of obligations, expectations, love, and resentment that can develop over years or decades. We're all just doing our best, making it up as we go along, trying to balance our own needs with the needs of the people we love. Sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we hurt each other. Sometimes patterns develop that need to be broken even when breaking them feels impossible. But here's what I've learned through all of this. It's worth it. The discomfort of setting boundaries is temporary. The peace that comes from living authentically is permanent. The people who truly love you will adjust to your boundaries, even if it takes time. The people who can't or won't adjust were never loving you for who you are, only for what you could do for them. And discovering which is which, while painful, is ultimately freeing. I still go to family events.
I still help when I can and want to.
I still love my family, with all their flaws and complications. But I do it on my own terms now, as a whole person with my own life and needs and boundaries. I'm not the family helper anymore. I'm Rachel, with my own dreams and limitations and priorities. And the family members who matter have learned to love and respect that version of me. The ones who can't have moved to the periphery of my life, and I'm at peace with that too. The mountains in Tennessee are still there, waiting for the next time I need to escape and recenter myself. But these days, I don't need to escape as often, because I've learned to set boundaries before resentment builds. I've learned to say no calmly and without guilt. I've learned that my well-being matters just as much as anyone else's. These lessons didn't come easy, but they've changed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined when I first said no at that dinner table 2 years ago. So yes, I refused to babysit 15 children at my cousin's wedding. I went to the mountains instead. And in doing so, I taught my family and myself one of life's most important lessons: respect must be mutual, even in family relationships. Especially in family relationships. Because the people you love most are the ones who can hurt you deepest, and the patterns you establish with them will shape your life in profound ways. Better to establish patterns of respect and reciprocity than patterns of obligation and resentment. That's my story. Not a story with a tidy ending where everything is perfect and everyone learns their lesson and we all live happily ever after. Real life doesn't work that way. But it's a story about growth and change and the hard work of becoming someone who respects herself enough to demand respect from others. And if nothing else, I hope it's a story that gives someone else the courage to set their own boundaries, to say their own no, to choose their own mountains over someone else's wedding. They called me selfish for choosing myself over their expectations. Turns out the real family emergency was me finally realizing I deserved better.